Okay, it's officially 9:02, so to say to everyone who came on time, welcome so much to the 2020 ASU Digital Credentials Summit. I'm Heather Hasley. I'm the co-executive director of the Learning Futures Collaboratory, and we're so glad that all of you could join us today. I know that this was supposed to be an in-person event, but now we get to have all of you on Zoom, and we're really looking forward to 5 days of short presentations about the momentous amount of work that's been done by the Digital Credentials Working Group of the workstream of the Learning Futures Collaboratory. Just a few pieces as we get started. We will be on Zoom the entire time. The meeting will be recorded, and we will be sharing the slides in the Slack. So we'll give you a link to those. If for those of you who don't know how to use Zoom, we have a really good diagram here to give you some tips. You will be muted until you want to ask a question, or if you're the speaker, then you'll have to unmute yourself, just so that we can all sort of pay attention to what's going on the screen at any point. But we highly encourage you to use the chat button and to keep the back channel chat going. Erin Morrow will be monitoring the chat and gathering your questions as we move forward. So please, please, please feel free to type your questions in there and use the chat. So we have 5 days of topics every day from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. We will be hosting a new set of topics. So today it's where we've been and where we're going, really giving us an overview of what the digital credentialing workstream has done to date and where we're going in the future. Tomorrow will be a digital credential overview. So what are digital credentials? When should you use them? The third one is credentialing skills, and that'll be on Wednesday. On Thursday, we have the digital credentialing pilots. So we'll be talking about all the different pilots we put forward and giving you some best practices from those different pilots. And finally, on Friday, we'll be doing a whole session on university connections. So these are broader projects across the university that we've put together that we'd love for you to hear about. Also, you'll see on here, you can join the conversation. So not only can you use the chat, but you can also join us on Slack and do a full back channel on Slack. We'll be monitoring Slack throughout the day. So that's LFC-digital-credentials. Please feel free to post about us on social media. We're going to be hashtag ASU DigiCred Summit. It sort of rolls off the mouth, DigiCred. And then finally, we have a Q&A document that we'll be putting together. So anybody whose questions that don't get answered during this session, we will put those questions into our Q&A document and make sure that those answers get sent out to all of you after the summit, and that we keep a running tally of all the things that you have questions on and you'd like to talk to us about. Finally, it wouldn't be a digital credential summit if we didn't credential the credential summit. So you can get and earn a digital credential for every day that you attend the summit. So today is day 1. Today is an easy day. You attend the summit and you can redeem your credential. As we move through the days, the goal is to attend, and then we will have some follow-up questions for you at the end of each day, helping you to decide how you might use these, any questions you might have, how you might deploy what you've learned from the summit in your actual day-to-day world. So if you come to every day, you can get a credential every day. If you're a presenter, you get a presenter credential. And then finally, if you come to every day, you get the 100% credential summit. So this is partially to recognize all of you for coming and for participating, but also to show you how digital credentials work and give you a tangible example of how we could use these. All right, so now I'm going to hand it over for Dan to kick us off where we've been and where we've been going. Dan?
Hey, thanks, Heather. So just before I get started, just to give a little bit of context here, we're just going to talk a little bit about the Learning Futures Collaboratory and our role in the work stream that is the digital credentials work stream. I noticed in the chat that we haven't had any recommendations for songs for the lobby, by the way. I was before I was thinking maybe something like, you can't touch this by MC Hammer. I'd like to see some better suggestions in the chat there for tomorrow's lobby music. Anyway, the Digital Credentialing Summit, the Learning Futures Collaboratory, our role since we started a year ago has been to achieve learner success through improving digital fluency campus-wide in next generation learning environments. And that's been a focus that we've had since day one, and before Heather and I arrived a year ago, and it's actually a year ago to the day nearly that I joined ASU. The digital credential work stream is one of around 14 work streams that we have in the Learning Futures Collaboratory. And the way that we bring those work streams together, if you just go to the next slide for me, is through a series of groups that work, that have representation from ASU community, from the members across the university, and from central leadership. And in those groups, we have representation from faculty, staff, students, and learners. And I guess that structure is what really helps those work streams have a fair representation from across the university. And each of those work streams follows quite a particular process in how they organize themselves and how we gather, curate, and synthesize the work that we do. So we follow a service design process, and in that we reach the point where we have a work stream with people focused on a task who can then actionize projects, which is exactly where we are right now. We've reached the point in our service design process where our work stream is piloting actual projects, ready to think about our next steps. So it's the perfect time for us to have a summit and summarize the work that we've been doing, which I was going to talk to in a few minutes. The next slide. So you'll see our digital credentialing work stream is one of the largest work streams we have, with 112 volunteers, representation from across the whole university and all campuses, including faculty, staff, and students. And for the last year, and possibly, I think more actually, I think 18 months in total, this work stream has been building up through a series of bi-weekly meetings to the point that we're at today. So who's here? Well, I think it's fair to say that everyone is represented today. And I think when we hear some of the thank yous later to the team that we'd like to make, we'll see the names of those people who are involved. But really, it's every college and school from across the university. And I think it's a real an example of how the collaboratory has been able to bring together that representation to focus on a really important project like this. So back to you, Heather.
All right, sorry for the crazy slides. Every time I unmute myself, the slide moves forward. So it's a little technical difficulty here, driving and muting and unmuting. So the digital credentialing work stream, their work was divided into these groups that worked on things that with the eye towards scaling to the whole university. So what could the work stream do to really provide some framework and some governance principles to how we might roll this out across ASU and be successful? And so they broke into 4 groups, one around issuance and criteria, the idea of a level of a credential and who can issue one, the idea of evidence and assessment, what are good ways to assess these different outcomes, and how do you provide that evidence, brand and marketing. So what is the credential we're actually going to use for ASU? What's the actual badge? Does it meet brand standard? Who can use the ASU logo? Those kinds of things. And then outreach, so creating all of the user materials and letting people know that digital credentials are a thing, and helping to upskill and bring people along for the journey. So as Dan mentioned, we launched a series of pilots across the university with this eye towards scaling and determining these best practices for rollout at the university. And we had 60 different courses launching pilots across 7 units. And these represented students, faculty, and staff. So these pilots weren't just credentials being given to students, but also to faculty for faculty development initiatives, as well as to staff for different staff development initiatives. They're co-curricular, meaning that they sit alongside the curriculum. They don't replace a grade that you're getting in the class, but what they're doing is making clear some more of the skills that you're getting in each of these spaces, to make that and allowing those to stack across different courses, so that when a learner graduates or when a learner achieves their credential, they're really able to show the different skills and competencies that they've put forward. And they're cross-disciplinary, so they go across many different courses. And so we're really excited that these pilots launched in spring of 2020 and are about to wrap up soon. So the question is, that's where we've been. That's how we got here. So the question is, what's next? So the next big step is the rollout at ASU across the academic and learning enterprise. And you'll hear Kim Merritt and Saquant Josh talk a little bit later about the different ways that they plan to use them across the learning and the academic enterprise. And then for the LFC in general, the next two projects, we're going to put the sort of the cap on the pilots and move those to operationalization. And the next steps for the Learning Futures Collaboratory are really to focus on this idea of an open skills taxonomy. How do we understand skills across with different languages, with different words that we use to describe them at different levels? So really thinking about what that taxonomy looks like. And then the last piece we're going to work on next is our connection to the future workforce needs. So how can we think about credentialing across workforce and the academic enterprise and the learning enterprise that we have? So trying to really align our skills to those future workforce needs. So now I'm going to hand it off to Lev Gonik, who's going to do a little recognition of the people who have been involved.
Good morning, everybody, from the home office of your Chief Information Officer. Pleasure to be joining you. Want to take a moment to recognize everyone in the work stream that Heather outlined. A celebration. A short year ago, while there were pockets of interest in the world of digital credentialing, it's really been in the last year that we've seen the effort approximate a critical mass. So I want to first recognize everyone on the screen and more that have been involved in this effort, and to acknowledge that it is really taking significant effort to congeal 60 projects using Badger Pro along the way. I'd like to make two other observations, if I can, in terms of the celebration of the work. The first is that for anyone who's been following the digital credentialing world for the last 10 years, you'll know that ASU has really only put its baby toe into the waters of digital credentialing. And this effort of accelerating, finding 60 pilot projects really is an effort for us to put at least one foot, if not both feet, into the digital credentialing world at once. And we really do have, in truth, a catching up to do here. Because for those of us who are involved in digital credentialing, I think we understand both at the level of sort of philosophical orientation as to why digital credentials matter, but also a very practical reason for why digital credentialing matters and why it's caught on all over the world in such an important way. So I'm thrilled that ASU is putting itself in a position to join this global effort that is underway across really the entire globe. I also want to share with you my own view. I'll be interested to hear what Kim and Saquant have to say a little bit later. In that going forward, for ASU itself as an institution, in order to remain flexible and agile, to support the needs in the post-COVID reality, I think there is really broad consensus that we need to be thinking extremely creatively about what is our product. And while we will never step away from one of the products being fundamentally the degree, there is an acknowledgement that the way we produce the degree, the way we stack things up so that you get a degree, or in fact, even if you don't want a degree, the way in which the university needs to be relevant to the needs of the marketplace today has shifted because of COVID in an important way. And I think we are, as a result of that, recognition of the need to remain incredibly agile and flexible and attending to the needs of the marketplace going forward, that we have an opportunity to really seize the moment that you are all part of, to really be the leading edge of a huge effort across all of ASU, to be responsive at this moment in time as we roll out the learning enterprise, as we roll out the ASU sync concept of how do we actually provide synchronous options if you're not in a traditional classroom setting, and how we can remix those in a way that provides value to learners in a way that in their very complex world going forward is going to allow them to stay engaged in the discovery process of learning itself. So again, I want to thank everybody who's been a part of this effort. We're here in significant measure to celebrate the work that you've done, but really to also acknowledge that the work has just begun. And we very much hope that the work that you've participated in will truly scale to ASU's ambition of being a not only relevant, but a leading institution in the 21st century. Back to you, Heather.
Thanks so much, Lev, and echo all of that. The digital credentials are really important as we move into a post-COVID world, and giving learners the ability to really shine and show to employers the skills they've earned through the higher education that they've received will be even more valuable as we move forward. So I'm going to hand it off to Kim Merritt, who is the Managing Director of the new Learning Enterprise at ASU, who's going to tell us a little bit about the Learning Enterprise and what's going on there and how they plan to use credentials. Kim?
Yeah, hey everyone. Thank you all for coming and listening, and Heather and Dan and Lev for initiating all of this work. It was a grand surprise when we started talking about these things and we got to learn that there was already a huge initiative happening, and so proud of the work that's already happened across the university. So Learning Enterprise, you've all seen it, you've all heard the universal learner language, and as its part in the envisioning of a fifth wave university, it's been little pilots and little things across the university for a long time. With that said, all of those pilots, all those initiatives have really come together in the opening of Learning Enterprise with the idea that we have now a home for how we can reach out to learners in general. So we have Academic Enterprise, which obviously serves, and as Lev mentioned, we have a great product that has really served for the test of time, so many students in helping them get where they want to go. But there are many, many learners and people in the community that have not been able to access that in its traditional sense. And in many ways, because of the design, it's really been designed in a way for a traditional learner. And so for a long time, even, we've called anybody who entered that space non-traditional, and are now just kind of moving out of that because so many learners in the community are now non-traditional, and the needs that they have in order to get a degree are not set up the same way we've set up the traditional degree system. And so Learning Enterprise is really designed around the idea that if we can stack our different opportunities for students and learners in a way that allows them to access it when they need it, where they need it, how they need it, that they can meet those goals. And instead of punishing students essentially for not being able to fit into our system, we enable learners to access their way into our system by creating these stacks. So with all of that said, we've been working with many of you already to think about what from start to finish that looks like. And for us, working with Heather and Dan and Lev at the start of the journey with the idea of the skill. So the skill is the base piece, the skill, the badge, the digital credential is the base piece of what a learner will access. And then we stack that up across the university structure. So skills lead to units, which then lead to courses, which then lead to certificates, which lead to nano degrees, which lead to degrees, which lead to master's degrees. And as we see that stackable structure start to build, we see learners have the opportunity to access it at different points in their life. So a learner can now take a course at its base level. A learner can now take a certificate, but that doesn't have to be the end of their journey. They can see how those stack together in order to meet their ultimate goals of earning degrees. I want to take a second to see if there's any questions just about the overarching vision of stackables and how that will play out. Everybody on this call is obviously going to be a big part of that. So any questions regarding that? And I can talk a little bit about learning enterprise in general as well.
Watching the chat, I'm not seeing any questions yet. Feel free to type them in, people, if you got them. Oh, here's one, Kim. How do you make sure that coherent learning happens with so much flexibility?
Yeah, I think it's redefining what we mean by coherent learning. For so many, the idea is getting the learning you need when you need it. So we have a vision of coherent learning, a lot of times meaning you start and then 4 or 5 years later, hopefully, if all goes well, you end up with your degree. And for some, that is coherent learning, right? That makes sense because they were able to start and they were able to kind of drop everything potentially and meet that goal. But for others, coherent learning could actually mean that they are entering in at one point where they need to be and getting just the amount of learning that they need in order to get the career advancement or the thing that they're hoping to achieve. And then coherent learning picks up again at the next stage in life when they need that next level of learning. So it definitely redefines what coherent learning means, I believe. I think it changes our scope of what we believe to be coherent learning. But at the same time, when I think about it, I think about the idea that we have just kind of set in our mind that coherent learning means 4 years and you have to learn it all right then and there. But in actuality, for a lot of people, when they're learning by doing and can enable that by additional education, that's coherent learning at its best.
Awesome. We also have a question from Matthew Casey that says, would these stackable credits be limited to ASU, or are we working with other universities, accrediting agencies, I'm assuming workplaces, etc.?
Yeah. The power is that I think we are at the forefront of being able to imagine this and enact it because we're already thinking so far outside the box on so many things here at ASU. With that said, our stackable, because of the power we have as such a highly recognized university, so many other universities accept our credits. And so as students engage in our work, they can also transfer those to other universities as well.
Awesome. Any other questions we got interoperability is totally my jam from Alexander. So he's on board with your interoperability piece. If not, I'd love for you to spend a few minutes just telling us about the learning enterprise in general and the goals of the learning enterprise. I think that'd be really helpful for this group as we move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So I mentioned earlier, we've been operating as a ASU, which has served so many students for so long, and it's been so powerful the way in which we've done that through academic enterprise. We also have knowledge enterprise, which obviously furthers our research agenda and empowers the ability to continue that growth of knowledge. Part of President Crow's vision is the idea that as a fifth wave university, we no longer just serve those two audiences, but rather our goal is to serve the entire community. And part of serving the entire community is serving learners across the spectrum that engage in our community. And because we're ASU, community means the world. But being able to serve that broader subset of learners, we are now adding a third arm to the university called Learning Enterprise. So before we had 2 arms of the university in the enterprise structure, we now have 3, the third being Learning Enterprise. Learning Enterprise has currently 5 focus areas. We have K-12, which speaks for itself in a lot of ways. It's the only one that's age defined for many reasons. We have Bridge, which is our work to help learners who are out in the world one way, shape, or form, who want to navigate their way into college, but for whatever reason, whether it be barriers from past GPAs or where they ended up in the world and how it no longer easily maps to a college acceptance, we offer Bridge, which is the path to the university. That may be as simple as earned admissions with you take 4 courses and enter into ASU, and it could be as complex as year-long 8 courses abroad with whole programming, hybrid programming around that. We have upskilling, which is taking some of our CPE, career and professional ed work, and reimagining it as pathways and a vision for how we can really deeply engage in ensuring that through upskilling and reskilling, we can help our communities and our workplaces make sure that they're ready to face the challenges ahead of us. And we also have lifelong enrichment. So whereas upskilling is really thinking about social and economic enhancement, lifelong enrichment is thinking about passions, developing your skill sets, really centered around the idea that you just want to learn for the sake of learning. So those are our 4 key focus areas that we're starting with. And with that said, we'll be stacking and digital credentialing all over the place to make sure that all of those little pieces that, as was mentioned earlier, that could have a lack of flow, have that flow and have that ability to have a coherent learning experience that isn't just a course here or a certificate here, but rather builds that entire lifelong journey for learners.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. We have another question from the chat on what is the integration going to be with the traditional transcript? Is the Learning Enterprise going to have their own, or what's the deal?
So it'll be a combination, and we're in the process of designing. So as anybody who probably with Heather and Dan and Lev at some point. So as anyone who's interested in this, there's obviously the need for the traditional transcript. It has a lot of purposes, but as we think about the future of learning, part of what we want to also think about is what is the future of the transcript? What is the future of how a learner can take that learning and leverage it for what they're looking to leverage it for? So are there different ways that we can present that learning? Are there different ways to take in past learnings? Are there different ways to push out that learning that are more beneficial for the ultimate outcomes a traditional learner is looking for? Our hope is that it shouldn't be something that is owned by the university that a student has to wait in a line or pay $10 to get, but rather that it's easily accessible and usable in the way that people are looking for it in today's times.
Awesome. We have a question on how do digital credentials interact with professions that require licensure or certification to protect the public from malpractice?
That is an excellent question. So when I think of, the reality is when we are offering digital credentials, that is one piece of the puzzle, right? But when we're talking about, to your point, something that has intense guidelines and for good reason, we will be working with those groups and those initiatives to make sure that those either match or that the digital credentials are a supplement to, but we wouldn't want to navigate around anything that really is there for the health and safety of the public.
Awesome. Anybody else have some questions? I think we've pretty much gone through all of the questions in the chat. Someone has said that they're really excited and they're really excited about all the work that you're doing. So if no one else has questions, I think that, Kim, do you have any final words for the group?
Yeah, I'm just really excited. The idea that there's so many people across the university on this Zoom is very exciting. And for us, one of the things to kind of plant in your mind as this goes forward is what would be the stackable journeys that you would imagine your college wanting to build out, because we're very excited to do that with you and imagine how each college can have a version of those stackable journeys that we would be able to ensure learners have access to. So you'll be hearing from us.
Thank you so much, Kim, for joining us today and for telling us more about the Learning Enterprise. I think that what you've just said really sets up well what Allison Hall in a moment is going to kick off with, which are lightning rounds, which give people some of those best practices for how they can actually start to design these pathways in their own colleges. So these dovetail nicely into one another. So thanks so much, Kim.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so I'm going to hand the rest of the event over to Allison Hall, who is our Director of Learning Experience Transformation and has been spearheading the digital credentials workstream for quite some time. She has been your fearless leader, and so I'm going to hand it over to Allison.
Thanks, Heather. And really, I am a baton passer in this lightning round experience. So I am going to share our lightning round and pass off to our fantastic presenters that we'll be doing today. For each day, the format of the day will be that, where are we going here? We'll have presentations from the folks you're about to hear, and then we'll have an interactive chat with all of you to answer questions, to get planning some of your ideas. So jumping off what Kim said, we really want to hear everyone's ideas, and the whole purpose of this week is to get us all thinking about what this looks like at ASU and how this will work for you and your learners. So today we're just doing the lightning rounds. You'll get a little preview of what's to come. And then at the end, we'll have a little form where you'll earn your digital credential and you can tell us what you're most excited for. So we're gonna kick it off. Tomorrow, our first session will be about what is digital credentialing and how does it all work? And that'll be myself and Katrina Fogelson from the College of Health Solutions. And so, Katrina, do you want to chat a little bit about this?
Sure. So we're going to go ahead and just go over a basic overview of what a digital credential is, or a badge, as some of you may like to call it. Different ways that you can go ahead and use digital credentials in a course or even in a program. And then we're going to go ahead and look at how Badger, the platform that we're using for the credentials, connects with Canvas. We're going to give you some great resources and show you the good company that ASU is part of.
Great. Wonderful. So we'll keep the lightning going with who can issue and who should issue from Lisa Kammerlocker and Toby Kidd. Oh, Lisa, you're muted.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kammerlocker, and I'm head of the e-learning and instruction unit of ASU Library. Toby Kidd and I co-led the issuance and criteria work group. Toby, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun pulling all these people together. I myself come from the Herberger Institute for Design and the Arts, part of the Herberger Online Learning team.
So part of our discussions revolved around definitions. And so a lot of people would like to know what issuance means. And when we get formal, it's getting recognition for an activity in the form of a digital credential. And an issuer is a person, program, or institution that acts as an authority and makes a credential available to someone as a certifiable experience. So I'm going to turn it back over to Toby, and he's going to outline how we considered our work in the Issuance and Credentials Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. And so part of our presentation will focus on, as Lisa outlined in her definitions, really anybody can give a credential for anything, and that's part of the beauty and the power of it. But we have some specific considerations, especially when we're working within, existing structures of higher education and an institution like ASU, or even within smaller programs within ASU, colleges, academic units, etc. So we'll walk through some of those factors to consider. We're also going to look at processes that we've found from another institution of how we can learn from what's been done elsewhere in the world for elevating things from a personal issuance of an individual to an institutionalized issuance and some of those criteria. And then we'll also consider what this means for ASU. So whether you are a high-level thinker, administrator, leader of a program, or you are an individual faculty member, staff member even, we'll talk about different ways that you can become an issuer and how that transitions to the larger scale thinking of ASU.
Great, thanks Toby and Lisa. And that rounds out tomorrow, Tuesday. Looking ahead at Wednesday, we're going to talk about what can be credentialed and how do you know, from Meredith Toth and Tim McKean.
Tim, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
All right. So we're going to be, as Allison said, what can be credentialed and how do you know? But we're going to get rid of that question because as we did our planning, we realized that was the wrong question. And so we're going to ask the question, what should be credentialed? We realized, and you'll learn through your sessions here at the summit, that anything can be credentialed. And everything could be credentialed, but should everything be credentialed? And so that's the discussion we're going to have. We're going to use a back and forth format where we help each other walk through the process of deciding whether different things should be credentialed.
Awesome, thank you. And also on Wednesday, we're having Heather and Dan back for Connecting Lifelong Skills with Credentials Meta Competency Framework.
Allison, you'll be there too.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Yes, so please join us Wednesday, Alison, myself, and Heather. We're going to be talking along the lines of the things we heard from Kim this morning around stackable skills, badges, and credentials, and how they lead to nano degrees and degrees. And how do we prepare for that? So how do we prepare our skills and competencies for that world? And the world beyond that, the world of open skills taxonomies and the mapping that Dale's been mentioning in the chat around things like EMSI and LinkedIn learning. So on that morning, we'll talk about how we'll be organize and map skill-based competencies across the ASU enterprise. What can we learn from existing practices and where can we collaborate on this effort? And we'd like to share with you some work we've done looking at around 500 competencies from 58 providers in higher education, K-12, government, industry, and various organizations in educational literature, and share with you how we've built a meta competency framework that might guide us in this work.
I'll also address some of those questions that were coming up this morning in the chat. So if you are interested in that, come on down. And then Thursday, we'll be getting into our pilots and you'll be learning from some of the folks that are actually doing this around the university. So Lisa and Julie, you want to take it?
Yes, hi, everyone. I'm Julie Allen. I'm an instructional designer with ASU Library.
And I'm Lisa Kammerlocker, and you heard who I am a little bit earlier. So Julie and I are really looking forward to telling the story about how the ASU Library Digital Credentialing Program began. And as we noted already, it's a co-curricular application. And so this originally started with a response to transfer students who were saying that they wanted to know about the library much earlier in their career at ASU. And we also had online programs that were coming on board and growing all the time. And one day I had this great conversation with Alex Halliday at ASU West, and he was telling me about the idea of badging. So we started to develop them. We developed 7 initially using Credly and WordPress site. And we know that there are many applications. It helps us with library instruction at scale. Those 7 badges over time as they were developed resulted in over 80,000 issuances in the 6 years we've had them. And we've moved to other applications such as professional development in the library through the recent pilot. So we have lots to tell you and lots of experience with digital credentials. And Julie is going to now talk about how we're moving to Badger and our new directions in digital credentials.
Yeah, so as Lisa mentioned, our program was originally built in Credly and WordPress. So that's really where my part of this came into play. It was moving the credentials out of the Credly system and into Badger. and getting that set up. And Lisa, I think, mentioned that we have stackable credentials. So we have several child badges or individual credentials, APA citation style, plagiarism awareness. And we've also partnered with different programs across the university to build parent badges, if you will. So, so we were actually able to set that up using Badger Pathway, so that basically once you know, students earn, or learners earn the child badges, they automatically unlock the parent badge. So I'm definitely going to talk about the ins and outs of setting that up in Canvas. It was really great to be able to build these things in Canvas and then have that integration with Badger. So we'll talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about too where we want to go from here. You know, part of the reason that I came onto the library is to really help build out our digital offerings, and we're excited to look into some different ways of assessment, especially since we are a you know, we're looking to scale. We are, you know, we have a high degree of issuances. A lot of students are taking our courses. So looking at how we scale that, how we create authentic assessments and authentic experiences for students. So we'll talk about that as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And our next pilot comes from the College of Health Solutions.
Good morning. We're the instructional designers for the College Health Solutions. We were fortunate to have several faculty be willing to jump on board and try out credentialing in their courses. One in particular we want to showcase is Karen Gregory Mercado. She has a healthy lifestyles coaching program. And in our HSC 440 class, she has about 46 different skills that she credentials. So we're going to go ahead and look at that and how we tackled a pathway for her. By looking at the way Badger interacts with Canvas, we had to go ahead and recreate a style of pathway where we actually brought in measurable skills instead of looking at just the assessments. And Mark here, we'll go ahead and finish talking about what we're gonna discuss.
Hello everyone, I'm Mark Fogelson. I've worked with many of you before across the university. One thing that we're doing at the College of Health Solutions, we're putting a lot of energy into our programmatic assessment for all of our degree programs, as well as our program alignment. That's both inter and intra programmatic alignment. It's a complex and complicated procedure, but we are dedicated to making it happen. And so what we quickly realized was that I was coming from the top down, and Katrina and Karen and all of the rest of you who've been working on credentials are looking at that most important bottom layer of what we call measurable skills. And the connection between the two to identify what skills, as you've mentioned several times before, a student or learner will be graduating with or can put into their toolkit as something that they can carry forward in their lives is very important and helps define each program within the program, and then helps the college define whether or not the skills that we are attempting and what we market to be our focus are actually being covered. So that's the concept of measurable skills from the alignment side. And what we're attempting to do is to show a single continuous thread from the lowest level, those measurable skills within any given assessment, within any given course, all the way up to and including the ASU goals. Each of the levels of the taxonomy should be a clearly defined path, and we're making a lot of progress on it. Look forward to talking to you about it more.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And next up, we have 2 takes on professional development. Tim, you wanna kick it off?
Sure. At the Herberger Online, if you go to the next slide, you can see that we've got our Canvas Foundations badge that we've set up. And this is a way for us to start to credential faculty's progress as they learn the tools in Canvas, and hopefully something that will retain value across campus among various units. And we'll talk more about that.
Wonderful. And Cody had to step out of the room for a second, but he is going to be talking about how Ed Plus has been credentialing their faculty professional development. And he will be here back on Thursday with us. And next up, we have the team from Explore.
Good morning, everybody. With me, I have C.R. Mackey. About 3 years ago, we embarked on a similar journey that led about 2 years ago to us forming a collaborative partnership to develop a digital learning system in support and with the support of our dean's offices, and to enable the key initiatives and vision of our leadership. Our challenge was to conceptualize an intelligently designed system that would empower the learner to discover, create, and take control of their own learner journey. A system that would promote learning between not only faculty and students, but experts, field experts, and outside organizations. One that we said needs to elevate interdisciplinary learning, and more importantly, could effectively bridge skill and knowledge gaps. So as we started with artists, designers, and healthcare workers, our use cases, what we were trying to solve was something that applied equally across other units in colleges and other fields. So with the support of the Learning Futures Collaboratory, with the support of other colleges, many different folks, we embarked on making this a reality. We're very excited about the system. I think it takes what we can do to a next level. And with that, I want to turn it over to CR, who can talk more about what we think this system does and why you should come to our presentation. CR.
Hi, thanks very much, Rowan. Yeah, we call this System Explore. We're excited about it, and it has many different features and the potential to really help the learner along the way. Explore has the power to support each college's efforts and ASU's broader universal learner initiatives. Explore will make our rich resources further accessible to the world of learners. It'll elevate interdisciplinary, customized learning that's responsive to our work with internal and external content partnerships. Explore will empower learners to discover, create, and take control of their own learner journey to leverage current skills and attributes to reach their goals and aspirations. Explore will provide a holistic, learner-centric, unified portal that supports the learner's lifelong journey. It'll provide learners with credentials that reflect demonstrated competencies and accomplishments. Over time, Explore will utilize the power of AI and machine learning to learn and develop as learners engage with the system. It will get smarter and increasingly offer more targeted learning support across the lifespan. On Friday, the 24th, we want to present Explore to you in more detail. If you're an individual content creator, an instructor, a student, an administrator, we invite you to attend, and we want you to come and join us this Friday to learn more about Explore and discuss how the system may support your work. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And next, we'll hear about, well, I think the College of Health Solutions and how they try to, did this get out of order? I think a little bit. All right, here we go with Michelle Watt and the Trusted Learner Network.
Hello, I am so excited to be both a learner and a presenter this week. I think that we have some exciting presentations coming up. As regarding the Trusted Learner Network, earlier Kim Merritt addressed a question from Alex about how digital credentials may integrate with an academic transcript. So this is exactly the challenge that we're working to explore using technology like blockchain. The value of that type of technology for recording and sharing learning credentials includes a distributed database, cryptography, consensus algorithms, all these technologies that increase trust in the legitimacy of the data that's represented by the network. So I'd love to have you join and learn about the long-term vision for the Trusted Learner Network, the work that is right before us, what we're working on to expand reverse transfer with our current partners, and then a peek under the hood at some of the future challenges that we are collaborating through across ASU, but then also with partners on the national and even international scale to make this vision a reality. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Michelle. So for our next section, we're gonna take a little moment to break out, now that you've heard about all the possible presentations for this week. I'm gonna give you a little chance to chat with each other, mingle about with other folks, and talk about kind of what you're most excited about, what you have questions about. So I'm going to.
As well as if you have had any previous experience with digital credentials. So where are you coming from? Share with the group sort of what your interest is and what you're most excited about learning about. But before we go, Allison, can you share, I think we might have a special guest on Friday that is not
You're right. We have a late addition to the lineup that did not make it into the slide deck. Wayne Skipper, CEO of Concentric Sky and Badger, that is the platform that we will be delivering these digital credentials through, is going to be joining us on Friday to kind of talk about how he sees all of these elements tying together at ASU and also beyond into the broader Open Badges community. So we're super excited to have him with us.
And then the other thing I wanted to say is that be sure to come back after the breakout, because we will have a presentation from Sequant Josh, who is the Vice Provost for University College and the Dean of University College. And he's going to tell us about exciting work to expand digital credentials across the academic enterprise. So you won't want to miss it. So we'll see everyone in about 10 minutes. All right, welcome back. It looks like people are trickling back in from the breakout rooms. Seeing them come back, I hope everyone had a really good discussion in your breakout rooms and met some interesting people. I know that in my breakout room, we've already convinced a college to move off of Credly into Badger, and we have some people who are really looking forward to using this in really awesome and interesting ways for credentialing mentors or credentialing their employees for earning skills through their work. So really exciting work that's been happening. All right, so I am very excited, and I'm gonna share my screen to introduce Sequant Josh, who is the Vice Provost for Academic Innovation and Student Attainment and the Dean of University College. And if I can only get to the point where I can actually push the present button on my, I have too many screens open. That is the challenge here. And your lovely little faces are all over my present button. So Sequant, I'm handing it over to you.
All right. So Heather, just a quick question, technical. Would I be able to move the slides forward, or do I ask that they be moved forward?
If you want to share your screen because you got it up, I'm willing to give control to you. Cede control.
No, may I just ask you to please change the slides?
Absolutely.
I'm worried that on the fly, it's actually not open on my computer, but thank you so much, Heather.
All right, just let me know when you want to go forward.
I am ready to go. So colleagues, I'm absolutely excited. And let's see how we do this. There, I can. So you'll have to, unfortunately, stare at the screen while I talk. But before I go into the project itself, I want to just take a minute to recognize this amazing event that is taking place. I want to thank you all. I know it's, I was looking at the number of attendees, over 100 people have signed up. Right now, you have 90 participants. So this is really fantastic. A lot of work has been going on over the past year. The work groups around issuance and criteria, around evidence and assessment, brand and marketing, outreach, and all of these areas have been doing their work. For 2020 fall, we have 60 courses. It's from 7 units with students, faculty, and staff all participating. They're focused on co-curricular activities. This is an amazing effort done by faculty and staff from across the university. And as somebody who is deeply committed to academic innovation and service of student attainment, it is a really wonderful, wonderful thing to see. I want to give a shout out to my colleague Heather Helsley and Dan Manoli for all the work they have done in providing leadership and really convening us, bringing us all together to think together about what we ought to do in the future. Learning Futures Collaboratory's task is very clear when it comes to this work, and I'm really grateful for all what they have done over the past year to get us here. A little bit about myself. So I am Vice Provost and Dean. I work in the Office of University Provost, and my areas of focus are academic innovation, student attainment, and one of the tasks that I have been given is to redesign University College. You may know its current avatar, and what I've been tasked to do is think about the future, look ahead, and move that college in that direction. So just a quick acknowledgement of what is it that we are trying to achieve there. Our goal, so that we're focused on 3 things. We want to make sure that students from any backgrounds have a personalized learning experience designed to achievement disparities. This is very much part of our charter, and we act in the service of that charter. Then secondly, working adults succeed in meeting their educational goals. And for today's work, and as you think about the future of work and future of learning, that's a really important area for us to focus on. And we are going to be doubly committed to that in University College. And lastly, to leverage technology in design of student services and products that improve educational attainment across the nation. So our focus is not just at ASU, but the things that we do at ASU, how do we ensure that we are changing the dynamics that is in play in higher education? We really do want to see very different results. And we work in University College in service of those ideas. We are guided by a set of design principles. I'm a designer by training, so there is no escape from it. We needed to have design principles that would guide our work. So learners first, we'll be bold because we are trying to address problems that in some ways require that boldness. Simplify, remove the unnecessary, be frugal, personalize, both in terms of care as well as in terms of use of data, and collaborate radically. We are in this together, and today's event really is a great example of an institution coming together and thinking together. Next slide, please. So the project, I mean, in very much keeping in line with the nature of the event, I'm sharing something which is in the work. This is not something that is already launched. We are cooking this up, and I wanted to share this with you at this time. I'm working with my colleague Fred Corey, and we are very interested in building what we call the Experiential Learning Network. Now, names of many of these things will change, but I want to give you a quick sketch of what it is. So we have an interest in really elevating the role of experiential learning. We are looking ahead. As you know, 70% of ASU's campus immersion students work in one form or the other. And when we look at national data on online students, majority of them are working full time. So I'm sure that is probably true for ASU as well. So how do you integrate work and learning? And how do you sort of rethink this relationship that students have with work? And in part, Experiential Learning Network tries to do that. We are very much committed to the idea of creating an experiential learning transcript using reflective practices that are embedded in the portfolio and creating what is currently being called the Spark certificate. I'm sure this will be renamed by the students as we move this work forward. So I'll walk you through the different parts, but just please do understand that this is a work in progress. So any of you who have ideas about how I can improve it, please just drop me a note anytime you like. Next slide, please. So this is not in any sense an effort that emerges just out of Provost's office. What we are trying to do is really curate the experiential learning work that is happening across the institution. And ASU has incredibly robust practices in place when it comes to experiential learning efforts. Our goal through this project is to increase awareness of experiential learning opportunities for students. We want to make sure that we maintain an equity lens in our work and that all students know about the experiences that are available to ASU students, not those that have a sense of how to navigate the institution. That we increase the quality and diversity of experiential learning activities, both inside and outside the classroom, that we are tracking and assessing these activities, and that we embed experiential learning pedagogy in the curriculum for particularly work-integrated learning, and that we ensure that every ASU learner has the opportunity to participate in at least 6 out of the 7 learning hubs. So these are thematic hubs under which various activities that we are currently doing are going to be organized, and the work will, really would in some ways curate what's already happening. We recently did a scan, there are over 160 different activities that are currently available to ASU students. In areas where we need to grow activities, for example, around Work Plus Learn, we might sort of start some new initiatives. Next slide, please. Thank you, Heather. So this, just wanted to give you a sense of how various things might fit into it. So for example, under leadership, our students are involved in student government, they're engaged in college councils, or for example, in innovation and entrepreneurship, we have Changemakers Central, absolutely incredible effort. Luminosity Lab is doing some groundbreaking work in this area. Or community service deeply embedded in the curriculum of many of the units. Well, how do we bring it together? And how do we make some of this available to students across the institution? And in so many ways, allow them to begin to address 2 questions, both identity and purpose, through creation of an experiential learning transcript, something students will control and students will create, and they'll be using reflective practices, etc., to tell their story. Who am I? What am I trying to do? And using these activities to find a path forward in addition to what they're going to be doing within their classroom. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a deeper dive into the Career Spark certificate that I mentioned earlier. This is something which is spread out across students' 4-year. We'll begin with an introductory course, which is a model after Design Your Life and similar courses at Stanford and Yale, where students get a chance to reflect on what is it that they're trying to do. It's 15 credit as it is required of all courses. 2 of the courses are work integrated courses. And then there are a set of micro courses that are tied with helping students be more successful at the work. So because they're all working learners to a large degree, how do we do that? To earn the certificate, they have to finish the program, meet the academic performance criteria. They need to be evaluated, at least in some of these courses, by an industry partner, and reflection has to be deeply embedded because of what we are trying to do around identity and purpose. Next slide, please. Again, I'm flying through this very quickly. So again, if any of you are interested in this work and want to talk at length with me, please just do reach out to me. But as I mentioned earlier, an introductory course, Ignite Your Career, which allows them to, spend the time needed to map out what they want to do. 2 work integrated courses. These are going to come from academic department. Many exist and many we're going to experiment thanks to the Learning Futures Collaboratory, and in fall, we have a small grant that's going to allow us to do that. Micro courses, these all need to be developed in the coming months. They'll be available to students across their undergraduate journey, and a capstone course that really sets them up to be successful when they're launching their job search. Next slide, please. So what are the kinds of things that are going to come together in this Spark experience? What are some of the requirements in some ways? So we want students to at least work 40 hours in each of their semesters. The reality is students are working more than that, but we want to make sure that they're systematically integrating work in their learning and they know how to tell the story, how these things integrate. And if they're not working, we'll work systematically in making sure that there are volunteer opportunities available to our student through their departments or organizations and their offices and external services. And they can also bring in the work they're doing in the jobs they're doing off campus. Micro courses I mentioned earlier would be focused on their success as working learners. We know that student success at their work, and these are from internal studies at ASU, has an impact on their learning, their relationship with their supervisor, and so on and so forth. So if we know these kinds of things, how can we help them be successful, and how can we really embed reflective activity in this? And then it'll require some form of evaluation from the supervisor on a periodic basis, so that there's an opportunity to reflect and systematically think through that, and how one tells the story of both experiential learning as well as the work that they are doing across their undergraduate curriculum, that we are preparing them to do that. Next slide, please. A little bit about the work integrated courses. I know you're all probably familiar with these, but what we are really interested in is finding industry partners who will be able to work with the faculty. And I think we've done some experiments, I think about 6 classes already, 6 courses as part of this work. We'll be testing out online platforms again in the fall. What would be done is the industry partners would offer assignments that would be embedded in the course, and students will have an opportunity to get direct feedback from an industry partners. And I know these kinds of courses are widely used across campus, and they'll be embedding them as part of this certificate. Next slide, please. So mentioned these mini courses. These are half a credit, 6 of them. You can take them in the order you like. I will encourage students to spread that out. But they focus on skills you need: collaboration, communication, managing project, cultural agility, workplace dynamics, and power within an organization. And they'll be connected with the activities that they will be doing as a result of their participation in experiential learning hubs, and reflecting on these activities while they're in these courses in their portfolios. Next slide, please. And this, very much in keeping with what you were discussing just right now, we want to use some form of a transcript. Ideally, we are doing a lot of work using blockchains in our institutions, and groundbreaking work. How can we do that? The activities themselves will be distributed across the institution, and they will be in a wide variety of forms. How can we make sure that the learners in some ways are tasked with sort of curating their own record, their own story? How do we use digital portfolios in an effective way? And how do we build a technology platform with a recommendation engine that allows students to connect the various kinds of experiential learning activities, as well as the courses that are available across the university, with the sort of the identity in some ways that they're trying to develop, and the sense of purpose that is driving their work. So I wanted to share this work with you, as a colleague who is thinking along similar line, who's going to greatly benefit from all what you have been doing, and hopefully we'll be piloting some of this in fall, just as we are piloting the 60 courses. Again, I'm incredibly grateful for this time today to share the work. I'm very excited about what's happening. You'll see me sort of working with you on moving this project forward. And again, grateful for Heather and Dan's leadership in getting us there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sequant. Anybody have any questions that they'd like to drop into the chat? A quick question for Sequant. We've got a couple of minutes just to see if anybody has a quick question. If not, you can always put them in the doc, and we will be sure to get them to Sequant and to get you some answers on those before the end of the summit, just so that, if you don't have one right now and you need to mull on it, but if anybody has one, I'll leave a 10 seconds to see if anybody pops up in the chat, because 30 seconds is literally an eternity in the Zoom world to wait and to pause for anything. So just a lot of thank yous I'm seeing in the chat for what's happening. So we have one question from Lisa. What is the time frame for a micro course?
So Lisa, just a quick question. So is the question around when we are planning to develop them, or are you thinking about it from a student experience point of view?
I don't have an answer yet from the student point of view.
Yeah, I think at this stage, fine. I was just personally very excited that we could have courses with less than 1 credit. I joined ASU recently, and in my previous institution, that was not the case. So this was a pleasant discovery and a way in which I can take a micro course and treat it in a way where tied with the earning of a credential. So I don't know all the details yet. I'm working with Fred Corey closely on it. But the idea would be to have it available for the duration of the semester. But many of these things would be online and self-paced, so students should be able to move forward quickly, provided they can do the reflection and have embedded the learning from the hubs from where they are engaged in the experiential learning activity. So a long answer, which doesn't give you too much in terms of concrete things, but just as simply the nature of the work and where we are at this moment.
So another question from Debbie is that what are students being charged for the micro courses, or are they?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for all services, somebody has to pay for them. So these are courses, and students will pay based on the number of credits. And just as I answer this, I realize we charge all kinds of fees to students. Typically when they're admitted in a quarter, not anymore for a particular course. So we're not charging any fees, but it'll be just simply how it fits in with the tuition. That's a great question. Sorry, Debbie, I'll get more clarity on it myself.
Awesome. I'm going to leave a couple of seconds more to see if there's any other chat questions. Oh, people are thanking you for your responses. If there are no questions for Sequant, or if you would like to just sort of follow up and put your questions into the questions doc as you think about them, we will make sure that we get those answers for you. Thank you, Sequant, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for the time. Really looking forward to the work in fall, and absolutely excited about the work that is currently being done. Thank you.
Awesome. So I am going to share my screen once more to wrap it up. We want to thank everyone for coming today and for being a part of this summit. And we hope that you come back for the next 4 days of the summit, and that even if you can't, that you join us on this journey, and that you learn more, and that you are excited about the potential that digital credentials offer for our institution. So I'm going to hand it back to Allison to bring us on home.
Certainly. So I just put in our chat the link that you see on the screen to earn your day 1 digital credential. It's a real short form, and once you submit it, you'll have a link to redeem for your possibly first digital credential ever. And we will be giving those each day, and these are stacking into a pathway for the full week of learning. So we hope you play along and keep coming back.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.